esta parte, subimos los videos y nos vamos. Entonces, empecemos. EnemyState Machine. Ok, teníamos aquí un pequeño error que no me ha sucedido en este video. Le subí bastante a los atributos de Trust, entonces pero empieza a vibrar ahí bien feo. Entonces log tiene que ser never sleep para que siempre esté. El script que no me muy bien. Tipo dynamic chase radius empecé a 3 y se tiene 1.2 y mi player aquí fue no sé un rato, pero se salva automáticamente. Entonces trabajo también 5 0.4 está muy bien. Entonces empezamos con el timer.
We're implementing a pretty simple enemy state machine that doesn't add too much functionality right now, but it does give us the ability to have our stagger and walk and idle states transfer in between different enemies that we make in the future. So let's dive in and get started. Alright, so where we left off last time, we have our player who can walk up to our enemy. Our enemy is going to get knocked back, and if our enemy follows our player, they're going to get caught up in collisions. There's a few issues though, namely, we can push our enemy around just like that. We're going to fix that relatively soon, not this video, but next time. And the second issue here that we're going to do, and this leads into a whole bunch of other problems that we need to, well, not problems necessarily, but features we need to add. So if I knock my enemy back, they actually should be knocked back further than they are knocked back. They're being knocked back to the end of the whatever radius it is that they come after us. So we'll see that they actually will end up getting knocked back more with the same.
Ok. Entonces, él está 1.2. Entonces, si quiere pongo que mi attack radius es 2 y lo golpeo, agarra hasta 2. Entonces aquí lo empujo, como dijo él. Pone aquí, pega. Es que como pegado. Vamos a ver eso que está. Ok, entonces este video lo puedo ver el espadazo. Pero también puedo venir y empujarlo. Y tiene ahí un pequeño problema. Un poco bien serio. Okay, sigamos con esto. Hay que terminar.
Amount of force. So let's go about creating a enemy state machine. So what I want to do is I want most of my enemies to be able to have access to this state machine functionality. Now when I wrote the log script, I discussed inheritance a bit, and I used it a little bit, but I didn't dive too much into it. So let's dive a little more into what inheritance is, and how we're going to use that to our advantage. So first of all, in our log class, we're inheriting from enemy, which means that anything that the enemy script has, our log class is going to have as well. Now, I'm going to want most of my enemies to have a state machine so that they can differentiate between when they're in idle, when they're moving, when they're attacking, and perhaps some other states as well. Which means rather than making that state machine for each enemy individually, I can make it for the enemy class as a whole, and then that way, everything that is inheriting from enemy will bring that functionality with them as well. So, in my enemy script here, which is inheriting from mono behavior, first thing I'm going to do is create an enum. Now, I talked about this with the player, An enum is like a Boolean value, except instead of being true and false, it can be any number of things. It's just essentially creating different types, or in this case, states, that our enemy can have in their behavior. So I'm going to create a public enum, and I'm going to call it, let's say, enemy state. And in here, I'm going to declare the states I want my enemies to be able to have. So I want an idle state, I want a walk state, an attack state, and I also want a stagger state, so that I can have them when they're knocked back, so that they're not moving until they're set back to be in the walking state. So in order to use this enum in my class here, I now have to make a reference to it. So I'm going to create a public enemy state, and I'm going to call this current state. So now every single thing that inherits from the enemy script is going to have this. This means that if I make different enemies later, they're also going to have the same functionality. Now, if I wanted to, I could add other states here, but I just want to show you really quickly. If we jump back into Unity and take a look at the log, as soon as this is done compiling, there we go. So current state is idle, we've got health and everything, and then the enum has this kind of drop-down menu that comes with it. All right, so now when we do our
What are you doing?
I'm working.
¿Y Ale?
Ale, espérame.